Joining me now for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show with the Knicks finally playing 2 home games in a row. Who knew that it was allowed to happen? This time, of course, the second time with OG Anunoby in the lineup. We welcome in a Chicago Bulls team that is 15-19, but don't let that record fool you. They've been playing much better as of late, and we're going to find out exactly why. A friend of the BlueWire podcast network from the show Cash Considerations. Please welcome back to the Knicks Film School podcast, Mr. Jason Patt. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. Glad to talk about Bulls Knicks game. National television on like a Wednesday night randomly as well on ABC. I was looking at the schedule and I was like, why the heck is this game on ABC? Apparently it was because of the strike and they have like nothing to show on TV. So we get some Bulls Knicks at the Garden on national TV on a Wednesday.
The weirdest part about so you said it's because of the strike. Is that also explain the 8:30 Eastern start time?
Possibly, yeah. That is pretty bizarre. But yeah, I think it was Keith Smith tweeted about it, just like that he asked, and like someone's like, yeah, because of the strike, the networks like need something to show, so like, oh, we'll just show some national TV basketball during the middle of the week on a week. Usually Wednesdays, usually ESPN games, not ABC, but those ABC games are usually on the weekend. But now we get a random Wednesday nighter. So that's exciting. I guess
the whole country will get to see the new look of the Knicks with OG Anunoby, but they'll also get to see this new look of the Bulls. And I don't even know what to call it about the post Zach Lavine, this Colby White version of the team. And I think the first question I have, I like to go into these conversations, these interviews as informed as possible, Jason. Yeah. And so I try to look through lineup data for trends, and I try to look for like big picture questions, but I want to stay away from the Stephen A. Smith general topics that lead to outrage, because I'm sure you're annoyed with how like the national coverage of your team is, right? But I go to ESPN.com and I click on Bulls, and I know because of digging through all the lineup data and doing the research, like there's some interesting stories here with Desumnu and with Colby White and like Andre Drummond getting 20 rebounds again. And the big picture of Zach Lavine is just staring at me whenever I go to the ESPN Bulls page. So let's just have the Zach Lavine conversation first, if that's all right. Because I don't even want to look at it from like a can the Knicks trade for him perspective. I have no idea if that's even on the table. But since he went down or went out of the lineup on 11/30, the Bulls are 10-5. They have a top 12 net rating. They're top 10. I think we're top 7 in defense at the moment. And they've just flat out played better. They're the number 10 seed. They're in the play-in race now. I mean, to the uneducated Knicks fan listening to this, how much does their turnaround have to do with the fact that Zach Lavine's not part of it?
So Zach at the beginning of the year was legit bad. So like there's the conversation around Zach at this point, but especially with his trade value and all that, like his trade market's allegedly barren was the word that Woj used recently, because it's just like, I know his contract's pretty big. But like, I think the conversation's almost like turned a little too much against him. I know he's never really won anything. And like, that's the big thing. Oh, he's empty stats, whatever. It's like empty calorie player. He's got one playoff win in his career, and then he won a play-in game with the Bulls last year, and they lost in that second one to the Heat. But like last year, the close of the year, he was really good. He was playing like at basically an all-star level. This year, though, he was legitimately not good. And I think a lot of it we probably point to is that he didn't want to be here anymore. He wanted to trade. There were the rumors out there in the offseason that the Bulls were kind of quietly shopping him. Nothing really materialized, of course. They were asking for a high price, but they were like, maybe we'll like see if anyone wants to like put a big offer on the table. And then this Bulls start poorly this season, and then it comes out that, Zach is open to a new spot. The Bulls are open to trading him. So basically, it was kind of like a soft trade request. And while this is happening, the Bulls playing terrible. He's playing just like way below his normal level, both ends of the court. I mean, he's never been like a defensive guy, but the defense was just bad. Offensively, just kind of freelancing. The efficiency was way down. He's known as one of the better shooters in the NBA, or he has been. Was not shooting the ball well from three. It's taking bad shots. Poor in crunch time, and you get out to a 5-14 start. The last game he has played was that in-season tournament game against Boston, where the Celtics won by 30. It looked like the Bulls were basically done by the first quarter. We had Joe Mazzulla doing hack Andre Drummond in the fourth quarter to try to keep point differential alive. The Bulls were a laughing stock, and that's kind of just the way they were playing. That was the end of a 4-game road trip where they basically got smoked, and They got smoked by the Nets. They got smoked by the Raptors, who obviously just haven't been very good this year. So it's just like they look like they were toast. And then he leaves. The next game that they play when he leaves was without DeMar, and they beat Milwaukee like in overtime. Caruso, it's like a game tying ridiculous 3, and they win it in overtime. And then kind of since then, we saw the Colby White thing. So I think you have to start a lot of it with Colby White. Didn't have the opportunity before, and like Kobe's his career's gone through stretches where we've seen him play great. But then, and I think a couple of years ago, like maybe as a rookie or year 2, he hit like 5 or 6 threes in a fourth quarter against the Knicks. They've seen it happen where like he catches fire and it's like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. But then he would have stretches where he was bad. He's just kind of been a hit or miss guy, really streaky. All of a sudden, Zach Lavine goes out, and it kind of started a little before Zach went out, but especially when the ball started going into his hands more with the opportunity, like all of a sudden, Colby White puts together like 2 or 3 weeks of like all-star caliber play where he's averaging like 25, 5 and 5 and like shooting 50% from 3 over a pretty long stretch of games. He has cooled off in the last few, and the Bulls offense has kind of taken a step back. With him cooling down, they're still able to win a few games because you get like the Andre Drummond 2020 games out of nowhere. But a lot of it really does start with Colby White, just like getting the opportunity, embracing, and just becoming just doing stuff that was kind of crazy. Like, I don't have the stats again off the top of my head, but I was just like kind of diving into some of their numbers, like his numbers and like the fourth quarter numbers. And he's just like the clutch numbers, like their clutch games. They've gotten so much better at closing out games. Kobe, DeMar DeRozan's been awesome all year in the clutch, but that's kind of flipped since Zach went out. Again, ridiculous, like 3-point shooting in fourth quarters played a big role where getting down early in games has still kind of been a trend for them. And then they just kind of blow the doors off in the second half. Like even in the game they lost the other day, I was at the Pacers game. They were down 25 in the third quarter, and then they came back and were leading for Halliburton kind of took over at the end. But they've made a huge just habit of getting down double digits and then making huge comebacks, and the offense like all of a sudden turning it on. And that was kind of a thing early in the year too. Like they have one of the worst like first half like net offensive ratings in the league, and then you look at the second half and it's like totally flipped. There's just like so much weird stuff going on with this team. But again, Kobe starts a lot of it, but even some of the other young guys lately have been doing great. Patrick Williams started the year terrible, kind of like Kobe did. He had an awesome December. Ayo Dosunmu has had a huge few games in December. He basically won them a game against Miami in Miami. Even Dalen Terry, who basically didn't play last year, looked unplayable again to start this season. He's made some impact in a few games. So the young guys kind of really taking that step and taking advantage of that opportunity has been huge. And then besides that, again, I mentioned DeMar DeRozan in the clutch. He basically won them a Hawks game the other day where they were down double digits in the second half. They come back. DeMar DeRozan closes them out and gets a win. Andre Drummond with a few 2020 games, like historic rebounding numbers, has been filling in for Nikola Vucevic, who's been out the last week or so and will not be playing in New York. He's had a few huge games. So like just kind of a lot of guys chipping in. And again, yeah, you mentioned 10-5 without Zach. Like now the report came out today that Zach might be back later this week. They obviously have not been able to find a trade for him. I'm assuming he still wants to be traded, although the Bulls have been playing better. But so like I would still guess he does get traded, but like maybe he doesn't. If like the rumor, if the trade offers out there really are garbage, like the Bulls shouldn't just like trade him for absolute nothing. Like he still has 3-4 years on his contract left. You hope that if he comes back and they're playing better, like that maybe gets him a bit more engaged. So like if he comes back, like he theoretically should be able to fit into how they're playing better now in terms of like the shooting, moving the ball a bit more. Like that's the question. Like if he comes back, will he buy into moving the ball a bit more? Is he gonna Is he gonna dominate possession and take bad shots again? So that's a big question mark and he's not gonna play in this Knicks game tomorrow, but Billy Donovan wouldn't rule out the end of the week. So that's certainly be a huge thing to watch for if he does come back and how that goes.
So before I follow up with the Zach Lavine of it all, the Colby White stretch I think you're talking about in the first 9 games from the Milwaukee game that you referenced that they came back and won. Big Alex Caruso shot in that game.
Yes,
by the way,
at the buzzer, game tying 3.
May or may not have had a money line parlay that had me invested in watching on Lead Pass, but I during that stretch, those 9 games from the Milwaukee game and obviously the 8 games following, Colby White averaged 25 points a game, 6.4 rebounds, 6.8 assists on 50%, 48%, 83% on his splits. That's 48% from 3 on 9.4 attempts a game. These are video game numbers. Now, like as you mentioned, over the last 6 games, it's tailed off a little bit, but he still is averaging like 20, like you said, 22, 5 and 5.
The 3-point shooting has fallen way off, but like, yeah, he's still finding other ways to contribute. And that's something he really didn't do as much before. When the 3-point shot wasn't falling early in his career, he would be unplayable sometimes. Now he's still doing other things, which is a big, just like step in his development.
To Jason's point, Knicks fans, about the 3-point shot falling off. We have a thing with the Knicks where everybody finds their 3-point shot against them. So 4 games ago, Colby White went 0 of 8 from 3 against the Cavs, and then 0 of 7 against the Atlanta Hawks. So we'll see if suddenly a 5 for 5 shows up in the first half against this Knicks team and their drop coverage. Although hopefully in the OG Anunoby era, things are different.
Yep.
How does the fan base feel about Zach Lavine? Is there any hint of like, we actually fixed this, I don't want something to come back and ruin it?
I do think a lot of people are kind of done with it and just want to like move on, and say that, oh yeah, they're better without him. And like, again, that might be true. Like, I'm still hesitant. Like, again, if Zach came back and was actually playing like his best version of himself, I would think that would make the Bulls better. At least offensive. Like, the offense has, now that like some of the Colby White like shooting has kind of fallen off, and some of it, like Vooch has been out. Like, sometimes you see when they're missing Zach, the offense has definitely taken a step back in like the last 5 or so games. But the defense has been good. And like, again, Zach's never been a great defender. So like, in general though, I think a lot of the fans are probably like, whatever, man, like we're like, you asked for a trade. We're playing better now without you, whatever, 10-5, like, all right, let's just move on. But again, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen because it just doesn't seem like anyone wants to really trade anything valuable for him. So again, if he comes back, it'll be interesting to see if he comes back and like, if they do keep playing better, or like if he comes back and just tanks things again, like fans are going to be mad. I'm like, get out of here, dude. Like, we were playing better without you.
Bit of a behind the scenes for those watching on the YouTube channel. If you're wondering why Jason is now on the left, I don't think people have ever put 2 and 2 together of why I do this, because the home team goes on the left and the home team goes on the right, and the home team goes on the, wait, I don't even think I explained it right. It's literally away and home is supposed to be how it goes, from left to right. It's Bulls at Knicks. So I try to match that with the screen. I didn't realize it until 12 minutes into the pod that I was technically the road team. And a lot of that has to do, as I segue this perfectly, into how difficult the Knicks schedule has been. They just played a home game on New Year's Day against the Minnesota Timberwolves. There was a 9-game stretch to end 2023 where all they played were 500 teams or better. They had played, of their 30 games to start the year, they had played, I believe it was 20 road games to start the year. So they had barely played at MSG to start this season, basically. Yeah. Everybody's sick of hearing it, but they're playing, in-season tournament reward, because they did make the tournament, was an extra road game against the Bucks. And then because they lost that game, they got an extra road game against the Celtics, who lost to the Pacers. So they're going to be the only team that gets to play the Bucks and the Celtics 5 times each this year. And I wonder about the Bulls schedule and how, I'm going to just flat out ask, has it been a difficult schedule for the Bulls this year? Or are they coming up on a difficult part?
So the Bulls in-season tournament, they went 0-4, and they got to play the Hornets and Spurs during that week. So that was nice. And they
Your
won
punishment for not making the tournament.
Yeah, the Bulls, they intentionally tanked the in-season tournament so they could get 2 weak opponents during that week where they filled in those games. There have been some really tough stretches of the schedule. It has been pretty home heavy. I think they're like, I think they will have more road games coming in like the second half of the season, and like they're on the road tonight in Philly. And then there's a really tough back-to-back the Bulls got tonight in Philly, although they did beat Philly with Embiid a week or 2 ago in Philly, which was very surprising. And then obviously going into New York tomorrow, so like that's a really tough kind of 2-step there on the road. But like this December, so when they were 5-14. I was looking at the schedule and everyone was like, are the Bulls going to have 10 wins by the time 2024 rolls around? Because like theoretically, looking at the schedule, like they had a bunch of tough games, even though it was pretty home heavy, and they just finished a 6-game home stand to finish out 2023. But like, I mean, they played like the Bucks multiple times, and they played the Sixers multiple times, and they played the Lakers, and like they played like the Heat on a back-to-back in Miami, but they beat Milwaukee in a home game. They almost beat them in Milwaukee again. They beat Philly twice. One of the games, this last game was without Embiid. The Sixers were on a road back-to-back. So like schedule win, but still like got to win the game, and they did. They beat Miami in one of those road back-to-back, and they lost the other one on Jimmy Butler game winner at the buzzer, and they smashed the Lakers. No, the Lakers are not playing well right now, but they've racked up some really nice wins during a stretch of the schedule where I thought they were totally screwed. And obviously, again, I did not envision the Colby White thing happening and them just all of a sudden like playing so much better without Zach. But so yeah, there have been some stretches with some really tough stretches and games that they've won that I just thought they had no business winning. So again, I think they do have more of a road heavy stretch kind of the rest of the season. I think they've played maybe 4 or 5 more home games than road, and get kind of starting tonight here with these. They start in about 10, 15 minutes in Philly. Embiid is back, so that'll be a tough one. But they beat them. If they beat them again in Philly tonight with Embiid back, like that'd be 3-0 against the Sixers this year. I just no idea what the heck is up with this team, especially because the Bulls are still missing Vooch, Zach, Torrey Craig. They're missing some key guys. So if they go to Philly and beat them again before going to New York, and that should be a good game, like that'd be pretty crazy.
I think first of all, to clarify the Knicks schedule of it all, they had until New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, technically, they had played 32 games in 2023 this season, and 20 of them were on the road. They were 9-11 on the road. They had mostly been playing like these 500 teams. They believe they had 8 back-to-backs during that stretch too. And then, as I mentioned, the 2 difficult in-season tournament games. And then to start 2024, it's like, great, you're back at home for a mini homestand. Here's Minnesota, which the Knicks got the W with the new look of their team and an OG Anunoby. The follow-up I have to that, and it's I guess a bit of a 2-part question, so by all means take your time, but what does a disappointing season look like for the Bulls? And if if they were in the play-in last year, and as a Knicks fan who watched his team lose to the Miami Heat in the second round, this 8th seed that got hot, thank you to the Chicago Bulls for not eliminating the Heat in that play-in game when they had the lead with minutes left. I replay those last few minutes, those Max Strus threes a bunch, especially when the Knicks were at home for the conference finals. But the point being, does the record and where they end up in the playoffs or play in, does that have anything to do with whether you consider a season a success or not in Chicago, or is it more like measured in transactions and what you get back, or whether you do make trades at the deadline?
So if they actually got into the playoffs and had a competitive first round series that, I can't say I'd be disappointed by that. Although you still would have to wonder though, if that's going to just they're going to keep doubling down on this group, because ultimately still DeMar's going to be 35. Vooch is older. Are they still going to kind of run this group back again? They've done so little on the transaction front since they kind of put this group together, that it's does them maybe overachieving the rest of the season, will that hurt them in the long term, and just them continuing to double down ultimately on a team that's still pretty mediocre and the ceiling's clearly not that high? Because there's a lot of evidence right now. This group's been together for a while, that even though they've had stretches where they look good, and obviously they looked good with Lonzo before all that happened, but are they going to be Lonzo Ball's going to come back next year? We're just going to add him to this group, and then we're going to take off again and be really good again. Although Lonzo hasn't played in 2+ years or whatever.
Real quick, that just this is a bit of a side note. Just that Lonzo situation legitimately makes me sad. There's a lot of Knicks fans that also share that. We were interested in Lonzo when he was still in New Orleans, and before this was a trade deadline conversation and just I'm sure Bulls fans feel the same way. Well, okay, you can tell me whether the Lonzo situation is more of a frustration or if it's just a bummer that we saw when it was working with him and Caruso, it was really working.
Yeah, I would say both. And we did get some good news on that front last week. He's apparently, I think he's going to start running this month again. That sounds like that, the issue that he had, that the chronic knee issue where he was basically feeling pain, doing basic life activities. Apparently the procedure has fixed that, allegedly. Of course, that's going from this and doing some running on a court. That's a long way from being an effective NBA basketball player or even being able to play again. So still crossing fingers there. I don't think you can really expect anything out of him. He comes back after a missing few years. How much can he play? Will he actually stay healthy? How good is he? I don't think we can really expect anything there. So if he ever even just gets on the court again for the Bulls, that would be just nice to see, and just a nice story. But again, they can't really expect anything from him. So I do think some fans are probably concerned again, if they finish this year like decent, they keep playing decently well, and they make it through the play-in tournament. Like I think the front office would see that as a huge success given where they started the season, and then they might just kind of be like, oh well, we're going to keep these guys together. It's all good. We'll give DeMar this extension. We got Lonzo coming back. Like we're going to be all good. And I think that could turn into just like maybe spinning your wheels still because they've done so little on the transaction front. Like, I'm not going to come here and say they need to blow everything up, but like I do think they still have to make some moves. They have to kind of replenish if possible their draft capital. I mean, I don't even know if DeMar wants to come back, I guess. Like there's still questions about like that. Like how much you're going to pay a 35-year-old DeMar? How good is he going to be moving forward? So like what would be an actual disappointing season for me? I guess like if they do kind of fall apart again, but then like I think the worst like case scenario would be like they don't make any trades. They kind of just roll forward with this. The Zach thing, maybe they make like a bad Zach trade. Although I almost kind of expect like a not a great return. Maybe as long as they don't make like a brutal one. Like, but I'm not expecting a great return for Zach at this point. Even
what does a bad trade look like in Zach Lavine?
I mean, like I don't love the Lakers thing. If it's like D'Lo, Rui, and like
it's salary filler and one pick, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then like if we look at like the Sixers, if it was like Tobias Harris, like expiring contract, one pick, and then like maybe an okay young guy, like it's just not that exciting. Especially when those picks are like way down the road. That's just like.
I've thought the Sixers are the team, to be honest. And it's not necessarily because of the guy that you get back, but they have the best pick package, I thought, that could potentially be offered.
I don't remember what else they have. I didn't think they had that much, but I have to look at it again. Like,
well, they have stuff not from the Brooklyn trade because they had to give up stuff, but like they do have Clippers picks that they can offer.
Oh, right.
They have their own picks that they could potentially offer as well.
That's right. I keep forgetting about the Harden stuff, but
James Harden was on that team technically to start the season. Yes,
that is right. But yeah, so like, but even set that aside. So they don't really trade anyone else then too. But if they make like a bummer Zach trade and they don't trade anybody else and they try to like push forward and then they make the play-in, but then like lose, they don't even make it to the playoffs. Like that would be a pretty disappointing way to go about things where they like, whatever, they try to go in on this roster still, but then they still fall short. Like, I mean, I guess then they'd still be in the lottery, but like, that's probably not going anywhere. Again, I'm not really asking for them to tank here because that's just not going to happen. Like, but yeah, no trades and then failing to make the actual top 8 playoffs, like that would be probably a big disappointment. And we'd just be like, well, what the heck was this for? What was the point of this season?
So specifically the 9th seed and with DeRozan and
they basically they keep DeMar, they keep Caruso, but then they get like the 8 or 9 seed and then they don't make it through the play-in tournament and they just lose whatever game that is, or they lose 2 games or something like that. Yeah, that'd be that'd be brutal.
So then I'll ask my only Knicks trade specific question because last year at the deadline there was a moment I thought RJ was going to get traded for Zach Lavine. I don't know if you
I remember those
received the rumors the same day. And then obviously RJ's now in Toronto. The clutch CAA of it all has become weird because like there was the stuff over the summer that Clutch was just like not going to do business with Leon Rose, and then maybe 2 weeks ago, we heard the come to Jesus peace meeting that was going to happen between CAA and maybe it wasn't even CAA. It was like Worldwide West and Rich Paul. They were like, we're gonna break bread and fix this. And then the next day, it was like the Knicks are interested in DeJounte Murray.
Right.
Like who on the Knicks do you like? Obviously, post quickly in RJ trade, there's less young guys for you to look at and be like, hey, that's who we'd want back in a Zach Lavine trade. Or is it like they have a ton of picks to offer too?
Yeah. So the Bulls chat that I'm in with all my Bulls pals, like we talk about the Knicks quite a bit as a possible Lavine destination. I mean, and I would assume it would be something like Evan Fournier for the salary filler. Mm-hmm. Obviously whatever picks that they're willing to put on the table. I know the Knicks have a bunch. And then, like, if there's going to be a young guy, it would probably be Quentin Grimes is the guy we'd be looking for.
That's the trade.
Guard who can 3-and-D-ish guard who can kind of fill in, maybe be a starter next to Kobe, or a guy who can come off the bench. Again, I know he's had a kind of a down year, and I know he had some issues with playing time. I know that was kind of with the log jam there with Quickly and Grimes and all those wings that they had, and Dante and Josh Hart and RJ was there, and Brunson's there. Like, they had all those guys, and it was hard to get all those guys minutes. Now with IQ gone, I'm assuming Grimes is going to play maybe a little bit more. I know Dante will probably see his a bit more as well. But Grimes is probably one of the main guys for sure. Just again, I know he's had a down year, but it was like, I know last year he had a really nice season. Like if that guy came back, I know I don't think like huge potential guy, but like if you got him and a pick or two, and then whatever, again, Fournier, whatever other salary filler, like I could at least talk myself into that being like a fine Lavine return, just given what the market apparently is for him. So I think, yeah, that's the main kind of look of the trade that we've kind of talked about in the Bulls group that I got.
So it's funny you say that because over here at Knicks Film School, our genius capologist, Jeremy Cohen, speculated, but I think he's going to turn it into a full presentation on Sunday. The Knicks' potential path to the next big fish to potentially become available. They now have to go get a guy, and but not like a guy, like the superstar. Yeah. And DeJounte Murray's been the guy that's like, you get him, you could probably get him for, like you said, Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier, a pick or two, and then when you're ready to go all in, like say the Sixers lose in the first round or the second round, and Embiid's like, you know what, I'm out. Yeah. And the Knicks are like, well, here's DeJounte Murray and Miles McBride, who's now on a new contract, and Mitchell Robinson, who's on a new contract, and here's all these first round picks that are unprotected. Yep. So I don't know if Lavine qualifies for that. I actually haven't even checked the temperature with Knicks fans if we've moved on from because there was a moment last summer where I think a lot of us thought that they'd revisit the Zach Lavine for RJ conversation, and then the neither player got traded, and it was really just like if you weren't Dame or James Harden, you weren't on the trade market, right? So I'm curious to see what the Bulls do, and if I can before I pivot to talking a little bit more about this matchup, if I just like yes or no on a couple players, will they be there by the deadline? Your best prediction. So Alex Caruso.
I'm going to just say yes.
Yes. DeMar DeRozan.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Zach Lavine.
I'm going to still say no. I think Zach, he seems like a guy who probably like at the deadline type move, because I think we need to, or at least much closer. I think we still need to like get that like deadline, like pressure. We get a little more sample size of the season, and some team will get desperate, or whether it's the Lakers, like I said, would the Bulls accept? I would take, like, if the Lakers included Austin Reeves in a trade offer, I'd be like, sure, absolutely, why not?
That's the
There's
move.
no evidence that's going to happen, but like if they're still kind of just like struggling along at 500, I know they have a bunch of home games coming up, and maybe they'll turn things around and they won't feel as desperate to trade for Zach. But like the way the Lakers see, like their offense kind of stinks. Like they could absolutely use Zach Lavine and like the offensive punch he could bring in. I don't think he'd like nuke their defense or anything like that. If he's where he wants to be, which is allegedly with the Lakers, I think he'd be engaged playing off AD and LeBron. He'd be awesome. So like, if the Lakers were willing to do the Reeves thing, I think that makes it so much easier. Would the Bulls give in and maybe do the D'Lo, Rui, maybe like Max Christie or one of their young guys plus that 2029 pick at the deadline? Maybe. I think they would probably try to flip D'Lo somewhere else for something else that is not him. So maybe I could see that maybe happening at the deadline. Like I said, would I love it? Not really. Certainly not a trade I rush myself into, but like if it comes down to it, I might think about it. So I still do think Zach's going to ultimately get traded. But like I said, I think DeMar and Caruso are going to stay because I think the Bulls are just competitive. They've been better enough and competitive enough where I don't think this front office wants to like sell off those guys. And I do think they want to re-sign DeMar at like the right number and again, try to stay as competitive as they can the next couple of years with their young guys kind of showing more promise here with like Kobe and Patrick Williams and those guys.
So as we transition into talking about this basketball game tonight, I should say tomorrow for when we're recording right now, because we're recording this before the Bulls take on the Philadelphia 76ers. So this will be the second night of a back-to-back, as you mentioned, with the Bulls coming into the Garden. The Knicks obviously just made this big trade for OG Anunoby, and I like to hand the show over to my guests at a certain point to just get their thoughts, or if you have any questions about the Knicks. So I'll ask first your thoughts on the trade they just made and your reaction when it happened. And then do you have any questions or thoughts about the Knicks and how they've played this season?
My first reaction was, wow, Masai Ujiri actually traded
made a trade,
guys.
right? Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I have a running kind of joke making fun of the Raptors. I call them the Trashters, and I just always like making fun of them and joking about Masai being washed because just the last couple of years, just rumor after rumor about everyone's looking at the Raptors. I mean, the Bulls are kind of in the same thing. Like everyone's looking at the Bulls and the Raptors as these teams. Are they going to sell? And Ujiri finally made the trade. He finally traded after all the rumors, after all the reports about, they need like 5 first-round picks for OG and all that goofiness. Like they trade him in this package, only one, and not even no first-round picks. I know quickly, and they got quickly in RJ, but and then the second-round pick they got is basically like a fake first.
It's the 31st pick of the draft. It's Detroit's second this year. Right. Yeah. By the way, that pivot to a tank because you traded everybody, we call it the Portland pivot here at Knicks Film School, because Portland has that move they make where it's like, all right, suddenly we're going to lose 20 of 21. Like there's just like that certain point in every Blazer season that happened.
But yeah, I mean, I think the move made sense for both sides. I mean, the Knicks, I know like Knicks fans, a lot of Knicks fans loved RJ and IQ and like have been begging Tom Thibodeau to play IQ more, and it just wasn't happening. And it's like, you're not going to pay him the whatever 20 some million that he's looking for. And if you're not going to play him enough, you're not going to pay him enough. You might as well try to get something that'll help you, that'll maybe balance out your roster a bit more. RJ as well. I know like RJ seems to me, I think a lot of Knicks fans like him at least. It seems like maybe more a bit split. Is that no? Am I wrong?
He was a polarizing player.
Polarizing. All right.
I'll just add this objectively. RJ was playing the worst basketball of his career.
Yeah, I know this season was not good. Yeah.
He got off to this 7-game start to the year. That was like, oh my God, he figured it out. And then he went out with migraines for 3 games. And then, my goodness, like falling off a cliff doesn't even begin to describe it. And he'd have moments where it was like, oh, he's back. And then those moments would be just that. Even games that he played well, he would still be like, all right, you got into the lane and didn't look for the wide open guy on the wing that you drew the double and then tried to shoot over it. So that's why it did feel like they had come to Fred Katz that covers the Knicks for The Athletic had said they had kind of come to a reckoning with RJ where it was like he may play himself into a certain point in his trade value that his contract becomes extremely toxic and
brutal.
Which is why he ends up being more like kind of the salary filler in this deal for Anunoby. You know,
it seemed like Knicks fans are at least from what I had seen, like had really worked, just like really hoping that and like talking themselves into RJ like being that guy, and it just like there were the signs of it. And I looked at his numbers recently. I was like, oh God, this is not good.
Yeah, so, not great. Quickly was the big
quickly. I know it's tough, and I know a lot of Knicks people I follow like have just been begging, like I said, Thibs to play quickly more. Like he'd bench him late in games, and like he quickly would come in, and the Knicks would go on a run, and like, oh, look at that, because IQ was in the game
every game. It was a script. Right. It was literally a script.
So like that's definitely tough to lose him, but. Again, OG, I've always thought OG's been a bit overrated, but I think like this trade value wise kind of makes sense, and just the play form with what the Knicks needed, getting a big 3-and-D wing. Like I think OG was overrated in terms of like some of that was like trade rumors out there, like 4 first-round picks for OG. I mean, he's not that good of an offensive player, really good shooter, but like the offense is like, if he was as good as I feel like people talked about him, like the Raptors wouldn't have stunk like they do, but like he is still he's still a really good player. Just like I don't think he's like that guy, but in terms of like being like whatever, the 3rd or 4th guy on the Knicks and that defensive guy, I think that's great. I was making jokes when the trade happened about how an absolute Thibs guy, and that people were calling him Luol Deng 2.0.
Luol Deng, exactly.
I made a joke about how OG better be ready to play 45 minutes a night for Thibs, because he will ride him really
hard. Would
have
played 40 the first game if he didn't foul out. He was on track.
So like, so like, I think Thibs will probably love him, just because of the 2-way play, and just like, and then it's kind of like the Luol Deng. Luol Deng like couldn't really dribble that well. Not the best, like offensively, like he put up like nice numbers, but it was never like that dude offensively. I feel like that's kind of OG. Not that guy offensively, but he can shoot pretty well. He can do some stuff offensively, but then defensively, he'll kill it for you, and he'll play, and he'll just play. You can ride him, play a ton of minutes, bring that energy. So I think the fit with Thibs especially is like really good, and makes a lot of sense. And I know like in that first game against the Timberwolves, he was like a plus 20 something, had a really strong game overall. And that kind of shows you like, this is the vision with OG Anunoby as our starting small forward or whatever.
Yeah, and like he could play the backup power forward too. And I'm very curious to see what happens when they play like certain teams where he could guard the 5, and whether Thibs decides to go small. I'm sure you know this better than anybody. The times that he goes small are acts of God or desperation, because his religion is 48 minutes of rim protection. And it has to, I don't know if it makes you laugh or if it warms your heart that Taj Gibson is still on an NBA roster.
I was just gonna bring that up, that I think Thibs will play Taj Gibson over playing OG at the 5 probably. He can't quit Taj Gibson. I think that I saw some video, or even Taj might have had some quotes, like he came in and played like 8 or 10 straight minutes, and he was just dying. Like he was, he was just like, oh.
There's a screenshot going around of him looking like he needed a defibrillator, and you felt for him because he was on a couch 3 days earlier. Right. And then
he's 37, 38.
I believe he's the second youngest player in the league now, or active player in the league behind LeBron. That's what it is. Sense. And Thibs was like, "You're my backup center," and that's how it worked. It's like, he sprained his ankle. I thought he got signed for like locker room morale. Like, hey, we need a veteran because we lost Derrick Rose last year. Yeah. And then, we got to bring Taj back. Little did we know, no, he's going to play minutes.
Be the backup center.
Yes, those minutes were. God bless Taj Gibson. They were tough to.
It does warm my heart to a degree, though. Taj was awesome with the Bulls, like a fan favorite, and the fact that he's still getting contracts is amazing. It is, a Thibs contract.
He's getting Thibs contracts. Yeah, yes.
The fact that he's still in the league is pretty impressive and good for him. And big fan.
The Giannis Antetokounmpo is still getting contracts because he's Giannis's brother.
The Giannis contract,
yeah. So I actually do. I'm curious. The way things ended with Thibs and what's been reported, and his end in Chicago. Yeah, it seemed like it had just kind of worn out his welcome. Yeah. Like this, it was time. And then like Minnesota's well documented. The Jimmy Butler of it all was well documented. And like he got fired mid-season, but he was also making personnel decisions. Yeah. And with the Knicks, I'd argue he's like they're making trades that fit him, not like the players. So I'm wondering like if he's going to actually see an extension, and this will be his. I believe if he coaches one more season in New York, he will have reached the entirety of his tenure with Chicago as well, 6 years each. And I guess from afar, like what is your vantage point of seeing what Thibs is doing in New York, especially like last year with Thibs having the 3rd best offense in the league? That had to be jarring for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And those Bulls teams were definitely not known for their offense. They were known for their defense. the Knicks have been pretty successful with them. I don't think you can complain. Obviously you can always have your complaints with the Quickly stuff and some of the minute stuff, of course. And I know he still doesn't like taking guys out late in games when it's a blowout. I know a lot of coaches are weird like that, but I feel like Thibs has always been especially weird about that stuff. But
it's very much a Thibs thing. It's the number, maybe not the number one thing, but it's like Jalen Brunson turned his ankle down 15. A game they were down 20 for most of the second half.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Celtics.
Yeah.
And we're all like, again, really? Yeah. If this brutal in-season tournament week ends with losing Jalen Brunson for an extended period of time because you couldn't let go of the rope. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. But other than that, so the Knicks have had a good amount of success the last couple of years. And like I said, whatever problems you have with Thibs, I know, whatever. Brunson has been a huge part of that, and it's been awesome. He's a Chicago guy, so awesome to see Jalen Brunson turned into what he's become. I wish he was the Bulls point guard. Like that would have been great. There's no really no way that they really ever could have gotten him at any point, I don't think. But
they would have needed to hire his godfather is what it needed to happen. Leon Rose would have had to run the team. Yes,
right, exactly. But good for Thibs. Like I said, the years he coached the team were some of the best Bulls years since the dynasty. Obviously, the year they went to the conference finals, and the years that Rose was hurt, like they still grinded out wins because of the way that he coached and the way that team played defense. I know it did. The last year that before he ended up leaving, like that year was just kind of weird because him and the front office didn't get along. Like the roster was kind of weird, and that's when like Jimmy kind of started becoming really good, and like there was some like Jimmy Rose stuff. So it was just kind of weird season, and I think the front office was kind of done with him. So like, I don't know if I was necessarily like totally done with them, but like it was clear that the time had to move on. But like, and again, there are the issues. The Derrick Rose injury, the ACL injury, like they were up double digits in the final minute of a playoff game. It was a playoff game, a little more understandable there, but like I know that was always a big talking point. Like, why was Derrick Rose still on the court when he tore his ACL? But and that's still a thing now, of course. But like, I have nothing against Thibs. He's been a good coach for a long time. He's got some flaws, but the fact that offense, we've seen some offensive stuff from the team be better offensively. Like it's fun to see. So good to see him doing well still. Like I said, I have plenty of fond memories from Thibs as a Bulls coach.
Currently, as we record, I guess it'll still be true at game time tomorrow. He is 5 wins away from 500 wins for his NBA career, which would make him the 36th head coach in NBA history to achieve that plateau. Steve Kerr, who obviously doesn't have as long of a career as Thibs, would probably be next on that list. He's at 488. Thibs is at 495. That's number 4 and number 5 as far as active head coaches right now. So, props to Thibs, and hopefully now that we can't argue about how many minutes he plays Emmanuel quickly, that he can get back to just being a good coach. We don't have to be frustrated with some of his minutes distribution. Last thing before I let you get out of here, because I know you got to get to watching them play the Sixers. I do this thing with every guest of mine where I get the Mount Rushmore of rivals. What I mean by that is before the season, NBA schedule gets released, there's the dates you circle on the calendar. And look, I'm assuming your fandom goes back to the 90s. The Knicks and Bulls have a long rivalry that existed from that era. And as a Knicks fan, we were on the wrong side of that rivalry just about every time. I wonder if the Knicks are on that list. And if not, who are the 4 teams that you look forward to playing the most based on rivalry on the NBA schedule?
That is tough. I mean, the Bulls, they've been so bad lately where it's just like... I don't even know anymore, but like, I mean, playing at the Garden is always great. So like that, it's probably like them, the Heat probably. I always like watching Heat, like them play the Heat, and it kind of go back with the Heat. And since Jimmy's on the Heat too, I like what them watching play Jimmy. Oh my God. The Bucks games are always good now. They've been playing the Bucks a little better lately too. So the Bucks, I don't want to say the Celtics necessarily, but I like beating the Celtics. The Bulls certainly don't beat the Celtics very much anymore, but like, so like playing against them is I just kind of like, and like in the Western Conference, probably nobody like going. I don't think there's really any like serious rivals there in the West. So like, I mean, I do like playing the Lakers just because it's the Lakers and like playing LeBron, but so yeah, probably like Knicks, Heat, Bucks, and then I guess I'll go Celtics then. Would be those 4, I think.
I have a question about the Bucks, because I'm like with the Knicks and the Celtics. I don't know what it is, but I don't actually have hatred for the Celtics. I have hatred for Boston, and a lot of that is crossover New York Boston. I'm a Mets fan, so I don't necessarily share the Yankee perspective of this, but I'm a Jets fan, and I despise the Patriots and for like what the last 2 decades was, which is ironic that this Sunday the Jets will be favored in Foxborough for like maybe the first time ever, and it's like a game I want the Jets to lose because of draft position. Right. And like there's the New York Boston of it all carries over into the New York rivalry.
For sure.
The Milwaukee and Chicago rivalry, does any, like maybe the Bulls and Bucks don't have that great a rivalry, but the Milwaukee Chicago, is there any animosity there between the Packers and the Bears? I know the Brewers and the Cubs are in the same division.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly plays in it. Yeah, I'm a Cubs fan, so like, and the Cubs just stole Craig Counsell from the Brewers.
That's right, they did.
That was a whole thing. So
as a Mets fan, I thought we were getting him, and clearly he just wanted to drive the price up. I apologize.
I mean, probably that plays part of it. And I mean, and also just like whatever, Bulls Bucks are 2 hours apart. And the Bucks have been really good for a while. Now that they have Dame, like in the last couple of years, the Bulls have been really competitive against them. There was a long stretch where Giannis, I think, had like a really long winning streak, and he would just dominate them. I think a lot of good teams had long winning streaks against the Bulls. Like the Bulls hadn't beaten Joel Embiid until like last year for like 10 or 11 games, because the years after they traded Jimmy Butler, the Bulls were so bad where it's like, I don't even care who they play, they're probably going to lose or stink it up. But like the last few years after they've been competitive again, like they played better against Milwaukee. They had their playoff series a few years ago. Like the Bulls played them good for 2 games, and then they got absolutely smoked in the last 3. But it looked like that was actually going to be a fun series. Like they were tied 1-1, and Chris Middleton got hurt, and I was like, whoa, can the Bulls make this a series? No, they'll lose by 20 in each of the next 3 games. But yeah, so between the playoff series, like the Giannis, there was the Alex Caruso, Grayson Allen stuff last year. I know Grayson Allen's gone, but like that was a huge thing. So like the Bulls Bucks thing has kind of built up late the last couple of years, especially. And they've played some really close. I mean, this year they played like 3 really close, tight games. And Dame has been horrible in like all of them, which has been kind of super random. But I do think probably some of those other teams and the fan base rivalries there also definitely probably plays a role there too.
Well, you mentioned the Knicks, and the Bulls coming to MSG does spark some
absolutely
memories and some throwbacks to those bloodbaths, as Chris Herring called it in his book when the Knicks played the Bulls in the 90s.
Great book, love that book.
Yes, I'm actually so I had read it when it came out. He sent all of us a bunch of advanced copies. I just reread it by listening to it. I found out that you can check out audiobooks on Spotify. I was like, oh, this is a thing. I'm going to read more. Yeah. And so like getting to re-experience it and really like the Bulls just flat out matter when it comes to Knicks history. And maybe not for the reasons we want it to, but it absolutely, especially with Thibs of it all. And like he got like the old Bulls back together with Taj and Derrick Rose a couple years ago. I'm very fascinated how many times, I swear to God, if I see a replay on MSG, on ABC of the Charles Smith play, I'm just going to lose it. I'm just going to lose it because, like, yes, we know he was fouled 11 times too. We know what happened. Okay, but I'm looking forward to this matchup and getting a good look at this version of the Bulls.
I would love for in the near future, give us a Bulls Knicks MSG Christmas Day game. I need the Bulls to actually be good again so they can actually play a Christmas game because that used to be a thing where MJ and the Bulls would go play at the Garden on Christmas. I'm growing up. I definitely remember that kind of stuff. So I would love to see that again in sometime in the near future because the Bulls have not been good enough to play on Christmas lately. So I'd love to see that. I don't know if they'll be good enough to consider for that next year, but I would love to see that sometime soon again in the near future.
Hopefully they could manifest the Bulls getting to, like you said, getting good enough so that way we make that happen in the future.
Absolutely.
We'll start with a January game on a Wednesday because there was a writer's strike. It's at 8:30 Eastern. Jason, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your insight. Before you get out of here, tell the fine folks at home where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Bulls_J. Our podcast, part of the BlueWire Network, Cash Considerations, a Chicago Bulls podcast. It's me and Ricky O'Donnell. I believe we're going to have a pod. We're probably going to record after the game tomorrow night, so that hopefully it's a good one that we'll be able to talk about. So check that out. And then also check out clutchpoints.com. I don't do much writing there, but I'm an employee there. I kind of run the show over there. So check out clutchpoints.com as well.
That pod you record tomorrow night after the Knicks game, right? I mean this as respectfully as possible. I hope it's not that great a pod because it means the Knicks will have won.
Totally fair.
As respectfully as possible, I say that. Yeah,
it's going to be a tough schedule game for the Bulls on the second of a back-to-back. So like that should be a Knicks advantage. But I mean, the Bulls have won several games, right? Just like they have no business winning, and they've somehow pulled it off. So we'll see. Hopefully, at least a competitive game. Good. If you want the Knicks to win, that's obviously fine. You want them to win, but we had some really fun Bulls Knicks games last year. A few really good ones.
The DeMar DeRozan game. RJ went off, and then the Knicks missed a ton of free throws, and then DeMar DeRozan
Jalen Brunson was like a 90% free throw shooter. Like I think missed back to back
two, and then Quentin Grimes missed two, and it was like, oh wow, we're ruining RJ's night. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Competitive game. That's what I'll ask for.
Competitive game. We'll take it. Jason, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.